Greetings! So we've reached the magical number of 100 patrons here on Patreon, and in order to celebrate that, I've created this little gouache painting of Jonas, and this will actually be sent out to one randomly picked patron, but for everyone else I've created a video of the painting process and I'd really like to share it with you. So thank you for your support so far. It really means a lot for me, and I hope you enjoy my little gouache painting process video now. Before we start with the painting, I'd like to give you a small introduction to my workspace. It's a pretty simple setup. I'm keeping a good amount of clean china palettes. On the left side, I'm using a plastic board to mount my watercolor paper, and on the right hand side I'm keeping my brushes. It's a selection of flat and round brushes in various sizes, and for this painting demo I'm going to use the round brushes exclusively. Setting up my workspace is quick and easy. All I have to do is to lift the lids from my water jars and the big lid from the paint jars, and I'm basically ready to go. The paints are Nika poster color, imported from Japan. I'm a big fan of Japanese animation, and these colors are used by Japanese animation studios for background paintings. Everything on my table is recorded with a full HD webcam so that you can see every little detail of my workflow and won't miss anything. Alright, so let's start with the preliminary drawing. I've created a digital version of the gouache painting in Photoshop, and I've printed it out and attached it to my working surface. And what I've done now is I've just put a sheet of carbon paper between this print and the piece of paper that I'm doing the illustration on, and I'm tracing the outlines of my printed version of the artwork, and through the carbon paper the outline is transferred to the watercolor paper. So this is a very handy technique that I'm using. It has certain advantages over say using a light table. We will see this at a later point, but let's just say that by keeping the print fixed with tape in a fixed position on the working surface, I can retrace parts of the drawing at any time, even if there's already paint on the paper. And I will use this technique later, so we will have a better look a little bit later on this. So the video obviously is sped up. The original painting duration was 1 hour and 40 minutes, and I've accelerated everything with 4 times the speed of the original, so we will see this painting finished in about 25 minutes. Okay, I'm arranging my brushes. I'm going to start with the red jumper, and this is very straightforward because I already have a good color in my palette of 24 colors. It's called Scarlet Lake, and I'm using it without any mixtures, right out of the jar, to fill the areas of the red jumper now. It looks very nice in the sped up version. It looks like I'm really knowing what I'm doing, but actually I'm still training the use of the gouache color and the real brushes, and I have to be very careful. And of course I'm not nearly as fast as it looks now in the sped up version here. So I'm giving it 2 layers of color so that the color is nice and opaque, so that nothing of the white paper surface is showing through. As soon as the whole jumper is filled in with one solid color, here comes the blow dryer to dry up the paint. The next thing I'm going to do is to mix a darker version of the red, and I'm using some Prussian blue to make a darker mix, which you can see here. And well, I'm pretty much just painting the shadows on the jumper here. And what you can't see directly in this recording is that I'm constantly looking over to the left side, where I have a screen that shows my digital illustration. So I have solved the problem of where to put the color already in the digital version, and I'm sticking to it pretty closely. So basically what I'm doing here is a little bit like painting by numbers. I already know what colors I need and where I have to put them, and the real challenge is to mix the right color in the real world. And here I'm mixing the skin color because the face is the next thing that I'm going to paint, and I'm using some yellow ochre with white and some of the red that I used for the jumper. And now you see me painting a little swatch on another piece of paper, and I just found out that my mix was too dark, and I mixed some more white into it in order to light it up, and now I have found the right brightness for the skin color. I often do this with the little swatches because I'm still not used to the color mixing with real color. It's really hard, and especially if you're using white in your mix, you will find out that the color looks the wet color on your palette looks very different from the dried version on the paper. So if I'm not sure what I'm doing, I will paint a little swatch on an extra piece of paper and use the blow dryer to dry it up and see what color comes out. So the base color of the skin is filled in. I'm now creating a darker version of the skin color in order to paint the shadow values. And again, my first action was to use the little color swatch to test the value of my newly mixed darker version of the skin color. And it's just a few little shadow lines here and there in the face, in the hands. Now what I'm doing now is I'm mixing a slightly darker version of the skin color to have some midtones above the nose. And now I'm mixing a much darker version of the skin color in order to draw a few dark lines in the hands below, I guess. Yes, there it is. Between the fingers and in the ear. So it's 4 different shades of the skin color, a base shade, a shadow shade, and then a mid-tone shape and a very dark shade. Now I'm painting in the eyes. The outline was still showing a little bit through the skin color, so I didn't have to retrace them, but I'm giving the eyes 2 layers of white so that they cover up the skin color below. And now I'm fixing some stuff on the nose with the original skin color, and now I'm using some blue and some white to paint a little shade in one of the eyes where the shadow of the hair is falling onto the eyeball. Now the most critical thing happens. I'm mixing a black to paint the eyes. I try to do this as soon as possible in the painting process, because if this turns out nice, I know that nothing can spoil the image. If the eyes are working, I know that everything else will just be a piece of pie. So now I'm mixing a color for the hair, and I remember that I did some stupid stuff there, so I have now completely ruined the color. It's much too bright and much too green, and in order to rescue that, I'm mixing in some more red to bring it back to brown again. And I'm happy with the brown now. Some blow drying to find out the real value when it's dry. And now I'm painting the base color of the hair. So yeah, as I said, I've already solved the problem of where to put the color. The real challenge for me at this point is to mix the colors that are easily picked in Photoshop just from the color picker to match these colors in the real world, which really isn't easy for me. I'm used to just painting in Photoshop with the ability to pick any color that I'd like, and the experience to see that it's actually hard to mix a color on paper is really interesting. So now I'm mixing a darker version of the hair color. I'm also mixing in some blue to shift the hue a little bit. And now I'm going to paint some shadow shapes into the hair. And right in the middle of that, I will discover that this shade isn't dark enough. You might see it even in the video, although the video is not able to capture every subtlety of the coloring. But now I find out that it is not dark enough what I'm doing, and I'm mixing a darker version. And again, I'm testing it on the swatches, and I'm happy with it. And I just redo the shapes that I painted just a few moments ago. Now the dark value in the hair is working for me, and I'm finishing the hair shapes. At this point I have already painted a couple of bigger gouache paintings, especially for the Kickstarter campaign. And I'm slowly getting better in mixing the colors and judging the real values, but it's really hard, and it's a matter of experience and training. Alright, next thing, I'm mixing some gray for the hands, the gloves. This is, I believe, is the gray that comes right out of the jar. And I'm sure I will, in the next step, I will create a darker version with a little bit of black. There it is. Just painting some shadow accents on the gloves, and you see that this is something that is repeated over and over again. So first challenge is to find the right base color for a certain area, and then the next challenge is to find the matching shadow color. I fixed some things on the thumb here. I think I painted a bit too much gray there and had to cover it up with the original skin color. It's always handy to have all the colors accessible throughout the whole painting process. And now I'm mixing the color for the backpack. It's mostly yellow ochre mixed with gray to tune it down a little bit. And you saw me just adding a little bit more yellow ochre to make it more saturated. It was becoming a little bit too grayish. And now blow drying again to see if it's the right value, and I'm happy with it. So I'm now filling in the base color of the backpack. So I'm changing the brush now. I'm now using the smallest brush that I have. Don't ask me what number it is. It's pretty small. I don't know. Maybe a 4. And of course it's a little bit harder to fill bigger patches of color with a small brush, but we have some small details here in the backpack and the straps, so that it's much more easy to use a smaller brush. Now I'm mixing a darker version again, testing it again on the swatches, and painting in the shadow values. So this is a very basic technique that I'm using here. I'm not really blending color. I'm pretty much using opaque colors without gradations. Already the digital version already is painted that way, and I try to solve the problem of how many shades I need in the digital painting, so that I just have to do the same on the paper. I'm still a beginner in this technique, so I'm trying to make my life a bit more easy that way. I will definitely at a later point start to experiment with different techniques, with color blending, with gradients and stuff like that. Oh, I had a little drop of water on the paper just for a moment. But right now I'm feeling pretty confident with this very simple technique of just using opaque colors, fill whole shapes with them, and it's a good technique if you are a beginner and just start getting used to mixing colors and trying to find the right color. This is really the challenge for me right at the moment. I couldn't handle complex effects on paper right at the moment. I'm pretty much occupied with a challenge to find the right colors, to mix the right colors and put them into the right place. So, and again, at this with the thoughts in the sword. Sorry, it's really not easy for a German guy to pronounce these things. Now the same game with a sword. Base color, a slightly dark color, and then a a third color to have some shadow accents. Alright, so another little cup, and now I'm going to mix the base color for the trousers, for the jeans, and I'm taking a blue right out of the jar and mix it with a little bit of gray, and it's just a matter of how much gray to put in there to achieve the right base color. And it looks really funny in this sped up version, how I'm filling all these shapes. It looks so easy and so fast, but remember, I'm 4 times accelerated here, so it really took me some time to fill in these shapes. Soon I'm going to be finished, and you will see that this mix of blue and gray covers the paper perfectly. I see nothing of the underlying preliminary drawing now, and now I'm using the trick with the carbon paper again. I'm just tracing parts of the preliminary drawing of the outlines onto the artwork, and there we see it. And this is really handy. This is really great, because no matter how advanced your illustration is, you can always bring back the drawing that way, and this is really a great help. Okay, so now it's the first shadow color. And I already know that I have 2 shadow colors in the trousers. And yeah, we see how I'm painting all the details. I have a second layer of color over there because the paint was a little bit too thin, a little bit too much water. And now I'm painting a second shadow value for some parts that are even a little bit darker than the normal shadow parts. So this is also a challenge when you're working with gouache, the right consistency of the paint, how much water you bring to it. There's a sweet spot in my experience, a sweet spot where you have just enough water in the color that it flows nicely, but not too much so that it covers up the surface nicely. And it would be nice if that sweet spot would always be the same, but in my experience different colors have different sweet spots of water saturation, so it's really a matter of experience how much water to mix to the different colors. And now I'm painting the shoes. Well, the painting is pretty much advanced. I think we will reach the end pretty soon. As soon as the shoes are finished, there will be some finishing touches. They might be a little bit fast, so I'm just warning you now. Now I'm filling in some red parts of the shoes. I'm using the red that was already used for painting the jumper. Yeah, that looks nice. So it feels really nice to paint with real paint, I have to say. It's really different from digital painting, and the challenge of mixing colors really made me think more about color in my digital painting too. So I'm totally benefiting from the traditional painting process, even in my digital work. So now come the finishing touches. I'm mixing some gray to paint in the little push button over there and the screw and the sword. And I'm pretty sure that I will take some... Oh yeah, now I'm using some light blue to paint in reflections into the eyes. And now comes some black, and this is always the most fun part. Now I'm cleaning parts of the palette up so that I have more space to use black. And now I'm painting in some black spots that will be very dark, the darkest parts of the painting. And they make the rest of the painting pop out a lot better. And it's always fun to paint those dark spots. Now the teeth. These are really small touches, small details. Now I'm going to paint the shadow, and my frame rate was a little bit off at this point, so sorry that it looks so laggy. But we are nearly finished. The only thing that's missing now is my signature, and as soon as we see that finished, the painting is done. So this is the result, and I hope you enjoyed this little video demonstration of me painting a character portrait of Jonas in gouache color. Thank you very much for your time, and see you next time.